Welcome to You Can't Break Us, the podcast sharing real stories of parental alienation and family court injustice. I'm your host, Kaylin Hawkinson. Each episode, I sit down with brave guests who open up about their personal journeys, the pain, the resilience, and the fight for justice. These stories are raw, real, and powerful because speaking out is how we break the silence and remind the world, you can't break us. I have Ally Crouthamel here today with Crouthamel Law Offices. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. I'm so excited to have you on here today to share your insight and perspective. First and foremost, was it your birthday yesterday?
On Monday it was, yes.
Monday. Okay, 2 days ago. Happy birthday. I saw a little post about that, so I wanted to give you a shout out. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Could you maybe just give us a brief background of who you are and then share your podcast where people can find you?
Yeah, sure. So I am the owner of an all-female run law firm in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Some of you may know that as Allentown, Easton, Bethlehem area. It's about an hour outside of Philadelphia. I do primarily family law and criminal defense work. I have some associates under me and actually just hired some more. And I have my own podcast as Kaylin just mentioned, and that is on YouTube at Legally at Law.
Awesome. Thank you. I did make a list of questions because I will forget them and I'm really interested to hear these. But actually, first, I have a fun question. What's your favorite coffee order?
If I'm at Starbucks, it's usually a pumpkin spice latte, but they don't
Okay.
always have that. So
Yeah.
usually go with a caramel latte.
Okay. And I have seen you post shopping videos. So I'm curious, what's your favorite brand to shop?
I am a bit of a shopping addict, if you will, specifically designer brands. But my favorite is Fendi, simply because they make the most purple, and purple is my favorite color, and that's what my whole law office is branded on. So it just happens they make the most purple, so that's my favorite.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so first, how do you define parental alienation versus justified estrangement?
Yeah, so I think, there's a super hard line um, between the two that is often really hard to determine. So parental alienation from my perspective in the legal courtroom is intentional, and it is for your own benefit, right? Or the parent's own benefit that's doing it. And it's honestly, it's psychologically and mentally abusive, if you ask me, but that's just my personal opinion. But and then estrangement is sort of um I think it's also intentional because you don't, file a modification or you don't exercise your custodial rights, but the other parent that has custody is not saying, "Oh, hey, your mom's a piece of crap or your dad's a piece of crap." It's just really just they just don't exercise their parenting time. So I think when you force a child to view the other parent in maybe a bad light, that's what to me defines parental alienation versus just optional estrangement.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, roughly what percentage maybe of your custody cases has involved alleged alienation?
I would say more than 50%.
Okay, a lot of them then.
Yeah, it's pretty common. I mean,
Okay,
some more than others, right? Some are,
yeah.
your mom's a BITCH, and then other ones are, you know, you're not going with your mother, right? Like there's a total difference there from our perspective legally.
Hmm.
Um, and it just depends on how bad it can get, right? I'm not saying any of it's good, but some of it is so extreme that it's like, I can't even get this child to get in the same room as mom or dad.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious, do you notice county by county differences at all with how courts view alienation or handle these cases?
For sure. It's not only county by county, but it's also judge by judge, right? So
Okay.
like in certain counties, you have judges that are presiding over all types of law, right? So they do civil, criminal, family, estates, they do it all. And other counties I practice in where they just are family law judges, just criminal law judges, right? So if I have a personal strong feeling that judges should stay in one lane, just like me as a lawyer, I can practice any type of law I want, but don't hand me a tax document and ask me to interpret it because it's not happening.
Mhm.
And I feel like the family law judges that, see the cases day in and day out, they're much better detecting alienation, intentional alienation, than somebody that may get a family law case twice a month.
That makes sense. Okay. That's a good point. Maybe what early red flags make you think alienation may be present?
So I am a strong believer in that there's an inherent bond between a child and a parent, mother and father, right? So the standard is, and just like you obviously know this, but when you have a child, you're supposed to, or you auto love that child, right? No matter what. And when somebody comes into my office and says, I can't get my child out of the car, I can't get them to come up to me and give me a hug after the soccer game. They don't pick up the phone calls. They run away from me at exchanges. I'm thinking, there's something off here. And then it breeds the questions of, okay, well, is there a criminal history? Is there a CPS history? What, because sometimes that makes sense, right? Like if there's
Mhm.
an actual abuse and the kid is running away, it's like, okay, maybe I could wrap my head around this. But if there's nothing, and I often hear like the phone calls are huge for us, right? Like no one picks up the phone, right? That I can't tell you how many times a day we get calls to my office that people want to modify their custody because the other parent doesn't pick up the phone when the other parent calls, especially for a kid that's, 5 or 6 that doesn't have their own cell phone.
Yeah.
So those are red flags to me. It's like, okay, there's nothing else. Why is your kid running away from you? It's not because you didn't
Mhm.
buy them the PlayStation 5, right? You may get in an argument because of that.
Right.
But to the level of running away at the bus stop, this is hairy to me. This is sticky to me. And then that's when
Mhm.
I start asking those questions.
Okay. And in that instance, it kind of shows that the other parent is probably coaching the child or teaching the child to intentionally not love that parent in a stance.
Yeah, so like a lot of the times for me, you know, my clients will say the kid came home and said, I suck, or I don't love them, or I never go to their school, or stuff that, and to me, let's be honest, kids lie, especially teenagers,
Mhm.
right? Like they're playing both sides of the fence. They want to go to their friend's house. They don't care who they ask. So there's
Yeah.
some sort of level of what does that look like, right? And I think because I've done so much family law that when I interview a child, I don't interview any children under 12. But if I do interview a child and say, why do you want to stay with your mom? And they regurgitate something that a 12-year-old should not know,
Yeah.
you can tell. It's like an auto. You can tell,
Mhm.
especially like I said before, if there's no warranted reason. It's, oh, I don't like my dad. Well, why? I don't know.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't work for me, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to give me some sort of, and a lot of them think it's like, oh, well, I don't like my dad because he doesn't let me play video games after 9 o'clock. Well, okay, that's not really why you don't like your dad, right? Like
Yeah.
you can tell pretty quickly. And unfortunately, there's a lapse in the system. I think I'm sort of going on a tangent here, so you can cut me off
No,
whenever.
no, you're
But
good.
I think there's a lapse in the system regarding this because, you see it, I'm sure, all the time and hear about it, but you have co-parenting therapy, right? So, um, the co-parenting is to get the parents to co-parent, right, effectively. But the problem
Mhm.
with co-parenting therapy, in my mind, is they usually don't bring the child in. So if the one parent is going home and regurgitating all of this stuff to the child, it really doesn't help the parental alienation because you can tell a parent till you're blue in the face, don't talk about the other parent, but
Yeah.
you can't really stop them, right? Like that's the problem. And sometimes we get the child in therapy and it's discovered through the child's therapist that there is definitely alienation. But I have a problem with alienation in the sense that it's very hard to undo it. And I don't know if you experience this too, but like once it's done to the level of like, I'm not going with my mom or my dad, to rip that Band-Aid off and force a child, especially a child above the age of maybe 10, 11, 12, it's honestly damn near impossible. And we struggle with that a lot as attorneys because now we're letting a 12-year-old dictate a custody order. And that's really a huge problem in our system.
I've experienced that specific thing as well, and I've heard other cases, so that's a very good point. Since we're kind of on that topic, dealing with like co-parenting therapy, I'm curious, reunification therapy, do you think it's effective? I have seen it where it's ordered to do reunification therapy while the child is still being alienated, still in that alienator's environment. Do you think that's effective? It to me, I guess it doesn't make sense because the child is still going back in that same environment, being taught the same things. So it's not really, it's adverse effects.
Yeah, I think it's only effective. I would agree with you. I think it's only effective if the person who's alienating stops or recognizes that this was wrong. The problem is most of the parents that are alienating are narcissists, or they don't have the ability or want the ability, that's probably more like it, to stop the behavior. And that sort of becomes the problem. And like I said, once the child is so ingrained to know I can't love or go or be with this parent, because they're going to do bad things to me, they're going to tell my friend, whatever it is, it's very hard to undo that. And, you know, one of the custody factors in Pennsylvania is the well-reasoned preference of the child. And they put in well-reasoned preference because they don't want you to say, hey, I want to go to my mom's because she buys me all these toys, right? Like, that's not well-reasoned preference. But at the same time, if the alienation gets to the level of, my dad yells at me and spanks my butt, and we've seen other things that I won't say that are inappropriate, you know, a judge is going to be like, well, I'm not going to put them where they feel they're going to be touched or screamed at or whatever it is, right? And it becomes a whole nother level of not just, I don't want to go with my mom.
Right. Yeah. What documentation do you think is most persuasive to judges in these type of cases?
So, you know, alienation is probably top 5 hardest things to prove, right? Because it is very unlikely that you will have something on paper that will say, you know, I told the child you suck, right? In so many words. So the thing is, for me, is the most important thing is documentation of your attempts to visit or be with the child or call the child or communicate with the child. So I provide my clients with a custody journal. In that journal, which I'm happy to give you a copy, which you can distribute.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, it says my parenting time is, you know, Friday through Sunday. I showed up a Friday at the school. They threw a fit. I was there anyway. And I keep telling my clients, as painful as it is to show up and tell your kid, and your kid tells you, I don't want to go with you, you show up every time, right? Because the judge is going to start to wonder after 20 times of you showing up there, what is the problem here? That's my biggest thing. And like, a lot of clients, and I feel for them, particularly the ones that have been alienated against, is they will call and not get any return, and they'll say to me, I'm not wasting my time calling anymore. And you know, because the rejection is a stab right to the heart, right? So but for legal purposes, you have to do it, right? Because the next thing it's going to be is, oh, well, you didn't call, oh, you didn't show up, I'm not alienating, right? So that's the most important thing for our end, because you're never really going to catch, I mean, I've done it, but it's going to be hard to catch another parent talking crap to a kid. You know, they're not doing it in front of you. So it's top 5 hardest things to prove. It really is, because unless you can get the kid to come in there and say, Daddy told me that mommy sucks, it's hard.
Yeah. How effective are guardian ad litems or an amicus in alienation cases, and how can parents work with them productively?
So GALs are good in the sense that they advocate for the child's wants. The problem is, I know you didn't ask me this question, but the problem
No, it's
is you have a GAL, guardian ad litem, who says, okay, Johnny wants to live with his mom because X, Y, and Z. The issue is that the guardian ad litems start to become attorneys. And the guardian ad litem, I'm not saying guardian ad litems are not attorneys, like by law they are, but they start advocating for what the child wants and not the best interest of the child. So there have been cases where I have said, listen, you can have a guardian ad litem and you can stand up and down and say, Johnny wants to go with his mom, Johnny wants to go with his mom. But that's the attorney's job, right? The guardian ad litem's job is to look out for the best interest of the kid. So if you want an advocate, you're hiring an attorney, not hiring, appointing an attorney. If you want somebody for the best interest, you're appointing a guardian ad litem. So my problem is so many guardian ad litems act as attorneys for custody cases, and it's ineffective that way. So my feeling personally is that the court, if they're going to appoint a GAL, they should also appoint an attorney, because the GAL's job is to do the best interest of the child. And sometimes the best interest of the child is not what the child's articulating. And that's the problem, right? So you want an attorney, you can say, oh, Johnny wants to go to his mom, Johnny wants to go to his mom's. But the GAL is supposed to say, well, maybe that's not in the best interest because, she lets him stay up all night till 4 o'clock in the morning, on video games or whatever it is. But that's my issue with that. And I do think guardian ad litems can be effective, particularly for smaller kids, younger kids who can't have a hard time maybe speaking as if they were like having to speak to a judge. A 12-year-old compared to a 5-year-old talking to a judge in chambers is a little bit different. Although I've had some pretty drawn out dog fights with GALs. You've got to get a good one. And I think that's with anything in family court, but that's the issue with the GALs, is because they act as attorneys and not for the best interest. And that's my problem with them. You asked me a second part of that question and I can't remember it.
No, that's fine. So the second part just dealt with amicus versus gal. And so an amicus is, if I'm right, an attorney for the child, technically. Yes. They're also supposed to do the best interest of the child. So I was curious on your insight and perspective on how an amicus, if you've experienced that with these type of cases. And I'm just also curious if an amicus can make decisions, like if me, I have a lawyer, my child, the amicus is for my child. Can an amicus kind of step in and make decisions at all, or are they kind of like a gal where they are supposed to just give kind of their opinion on this matter?
So unless the judge specifically appoints, I have had this in one case where the parents were so off the walls, if you will, not your typical parents, right? The judge appointed an amicus to make educational and medical decisions for the child because the parents were unable to do that. Normally, though, if the parents are that bad, if you will, it goes to CPS and then they just take dependency and they do that. My understanding is the GAL is for the best interest of the child independently, like view the whole case and say, okay, it's my opinion. The best interest is primary with mom, partial with dad, whatever. And the attorney is supposed to stand up and say, okay, I interviewed Johnny and he told me he wants to go to his mom's because X, Y, and Z. So that's really the difference, as my understanding of it. But I don't think the amicus is supposed to make any decisions. Now, technically, the amicus is a attorney of record for the child. So I guess technically they could file petitions and do all of the things. I've never seen that done where I practice, but I don't know that would bar them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I'm not legally knowledgeable like lawyers are, but on my case, my child's father illegally withheld him, did not send him back on a visit. My lawyer filed the writ of habeas to enforce him to immediately send him back. Due to all the things my child's father was doing and causing a lot of issues, the judge threw an amicus on our case, and the amicus, from my understanding, how it was explained to me, said that since she was thrown on a case that was, it was already almost, it was near the end, so it had been going on for a while. So she said since she was thrown on at the end, she didn't allow the writ to happen because she needed time to review the case. So then it dragged on. So I was just curious. I haven't had experience with it before, but so I already asked about reunification therapy. That was going to be my next one. But if a parent, this kind of deals with it. If a parent blocks visits or withholds a child, which laws do judges use to decide what happens? Can it be considered criminal, or is this usually kept civil?
Well, both. The answer is both. So, when we have a child or a parent, excuse me, that what we call absconds with the minor child, there's many things that can be done. So my first advice is, call the police and show them your custody order and see if they will at least make a phone call to the other parent or show up at the house and say, hey, you're in violation. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, then, excuse me, I will file an emergency motion the next business day with what we call first of all, I'm filing a contempt of the custody order, but more importantly, I'm filing an emergency pickup order. And what that is basically an order from a judge that says, hey, any law enforcement that can come in contact with this child can remove the child from mom or dad and place with the other parent. And then I also ask usually for a sole legal and sole physical custody provision as part of that until we get to the next hearing, because the next thing I need is me to get the child back, and then on the next visit we have it again, right? So it's a clear contempt when they do that. The problem is that 99% of the time, the judges will hold contempt. They may switch custody, they may offer, they may sanction, they may do attorney's fees, they may put you in prison. Unlikely, I've never seen it, but the issue is there's not really much help until your lawyer files something to make it move, right? So, and the emergency could be denied. Like in one of the counties I practice in, the emergency motions are reviewed by the family court office before they're sent to the judge to weed out the not really emergencies but filed as emergencies. And if they don't deem it an emergency, it never gets to the judge. Now, I will say if I put that a parent absconds with a child, it's getting pushed to a judge. But the problem is you get a pickup order, right? And it says, okay, the local police can go pick up Johnny. Well, you show up at dad's house and where's Johnny? He ain't there, right? Yeah. So that's the huge problem that we have with our system. Now, there is an interference of custody provision in Pennsylvania, criminal case charge. Philadelphia County is about the only county I ever see charge that. I don't go there much, but they do charge it. We never charge it where I practice. Like, I wish they would, because I think it would hold parents accountable for stop doing this, because I have so many times filed emergency motions or gotten calls, or, I've tried to go pick him up. I can't find him. I don't know where he's at, on and on and on. And like, the only thing I can do is wait for a court date. And it sucks because you also don't know what that parent is doing with that child.
Yeah. Yeah. How do courts weigh the best interest of the child when alienation is alleged?
Well, so we talked about the well-reasoned preference of the child. That's significant. Yeah. And then the other custody factor that we have in Pennsylvania is the attempt of one parent to turn the child against the other parent. So again, they're going to evaluate, most of the time, if the kid is not super itty bitty young, they're going to interview the child. And I would hope that they would have gotten some training or some CLEs on how to tell if a child is coached. Because this is what I do all day long, I can usually tell in about 10 seconds. But, I'm not all judges are great at that.
Yeah.
So the other thing is I usually have my clients testify as to, what the co-parenting looks like. And based off that, there's usually a pretty good indication of alienation, right? Like I told you
Yeah.
about the doctor's appointments 5 days after it happened, right? Or I didn't send you the soccer schedule or things of that nature. So the judge kind of puts the pieces together. The problem is I can't ever say, Johnny came home and told me that you suck, because that's hearsay and Johnny could be a party, right? So that's another lapse in the system. While I understand hearsay and the point of it, I don't think that's a lapse. But when you have young kids, it's very hard, because it's very hard for me to get a 4-year-old to talk to a judge. They're much easier to come home and say, oh, daddy, you know what daddy said, or you know what mommy said, da, 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 da. That's way easier than putting them in a courtroom with a judge. So that's very hard for me from a legal standpoint. But they should, that is 2 custody factors out of 12 now. We just changed to 12 in Pennsylvania that show parental alienation. Also, if I can get the child's therapist in, if there is one, I always try to do that, because that a kid feels comfortable usually with their therapist. And if they can report as to, Johnny does really bad when he comes from his dad's, or really good when he comes from his mom's, or what does this look like? What does he do in his spare time? Why is he so stressed and conflicted? Those are sort of, key factors in that. But like I said, it is so hard to prove.
Yeah. I was curious, have you had a case, and I don't know what details you can share or not, or know of cases where parental alienation was evidenced, and is there anything that happens from that, or does that just kind of modify the order where if you see one parent is alienating, the judge would be like, oh, okay, so you're going to have less custody, basically, instead of like 50-50, you're going to go down 30-70 or whatever. Do you know what the outcome usually is if it is seen?
Yeah, so I have a case right now. It's still in active litigation, but it is probably the worst case of parental alienation I've seen in 6 years. So I'll give you the Cliff Note version. Mom raised the kids primary. Dad had every other weekend. Mom ended up in an abusive relationship with new boyfriend. Mom got a DUI with the kid in the car. Nobody was hurt. Not like a tragic DUI. It's still bad. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just okay.
Yeah.
And dad, then nothing. Then okay. So dad files an emergency PFA on behalf of all of the kids. CPS is called. She gets indicated on CPS. She pleads guilty to the DUI. Does all her probation, all of those fun things. Well, the children are substantially older, I would say 16, 13, 10, roughly. And, after you do PFA and then custody mod, it's taking a long time before she can get, this handled.
Yeah.
Right. So by the time that happens, the alienation has set in, and now the kids want nothing to do with her. They blame her for everything. You were in an abusive relationship. You didn't pay attention to us. You did this, you did that, right? And it is so far down the rabbit hole. I mean, I can't even get these girls to look at mom in the face. I've had her consult with an expert on parental alienation. It is so bad. And right now they're in reunification therapy 3 years later. And they're just starting to move to visits outside the reunification therapist's office with the youngest child. The older two will not. I mean, they absolutely refuse to participate in reunification. And one's 17, I think the other's like 14 or something. But this is what I mean. That Band-Aid, she can't rip it off. Like she's tried everything. She's done the reunification. She's done the therapy. She's reached out. She's done all the things, but they will not. And again, my hope is once they get away from dad and they're 18 and they go to college and they do all those things, that maybe that sets in, but they're constantly hearing from dad about what a piece of shit mom was. And they can't, they can't, I mean, I almost want to walk up to them and say, are you scared of your dad? Like it is,
Mm-hmm.
I understand
Like
what she
they're in
did.
survival mode with him, probably.
Yes.
He's had all this time, and that's prime age for brainwashing that I learned from therapists who are knowledgeable on this have told me that, those ages are prime age. So he really sunk into them, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think it's worse because she did do something wrong. I'm not saying she took a full accountability for her criminal mishap and she's been on probation and she's done all the things but a
Yeah.
DUI to lose your kids, right? Like
Yeah.
I have like potential sex offenders with more time than her, right? Like the math
Yeah.
doesn't math, right? So
Right.
and that's my problem with this case is like, Judge, like, it's been 3 years, right? And she's done everything you've asked with like
Mm-hmm.
A+ accuracy. She's
Yeah.
recognized it. She said sorry. She's written letters. She's give them their stuff back. Like she's done all the things. And you're telling me you can't even get them out of the car?
Yeah.
Come on now. Right? Like,
Right.
I mean,
It's not normal that the child just, we're all human. People make mistakes. A child doesn't just disown their parent for making a mistake, basically, unless taught that.
yeah, and because she had that PFA against her, there was no contact with mom for some period of time. So God only
Yeah.
knows what came out of the mouth, right? Like, or
Yeah.
actions, or was shown to the eye. I mean, I can't imagine. But the problem herein lies in this: what am I going to say to a judge? Hey, judge, this kid is 17 and a half years old. You've got about 6 months to control them. You know what he's going to say?
Yeah.
What's the point? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's where I feel like there has to be some sort of, and I also like, I'm torn between forcing kids to see their parents because I know not all parents are parents like you and I, right? Like, there's a lot of ones that get in it,
Right.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also parents that try really, really hard
Yeah.
that get the short end of the stick. And like, I feel like those kids should be not forced, that's a bad word, but should be mandated to see their parents. But that can't be a blanket rule because then we may have, parents abusing kids and then we're mandating them to go there, right? So there's
Yeah.
got to be some reform and almost like, I wish, how like in certain custody cases you can get a psychological evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder,
Yeah.
I wish there was like as part of a custody case that's going to go to trial, there was a parental alienation like questionnaire or
Yeah.
evaluation or a standard like form, if you will.
Yeah.
Because it's so prevalent.
I
And
agree.
it's
Yeah.
abuse. It's abuse. It really is abuse. Like
Yeah.
it's sick. Like the stuff I've heard, like, for example, my associate had a case today where dad told mom in front of the kid, and I can't even say the words on here because you'll have to bleep it out, but a slew of curse words that are wildly inappropriate in front of a 5-year-old kid. And then the 5-year-old kid
Wow.
goes to school and says, Daddy told mommy, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like, it is just at 5. Like,
Yeah.
come on. Like, I
Jeez.
don't know. My whole thing is you got to love your kids more than you hate your ex.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't get that. And I understand you two don't get along anymore, but you have something in common for 18 years, well past that. But
Right.
at a minimum 18 years, you've
Yeah.
got to stick, you've got to do what's good for that kid, because I always
Right.
tell them, you're unhealthy, your kid's unhealthy. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Because they're in that environment. They learn from you. They see how you are, how you act. I'm curious now, about 12 and above, they can be interviewed. So if coaching is found, if there is evidence, if you can tell the kid is coached at that age, though, I'm just wondering, let's say this kid is coached to not want to see the other parent, like you were kind of giving examples to. What can the judge or what can court do about that? If they're of this age, you can't, kind of like you said, you can't just force this kid to go or go see the parent if they're so ingrained listening to the other parent and being alienated and just forcefully, so hard pressed on not seeing that other parent, but you have evidence that alienation, there's coaching. Can anything be done about that? I mean, I know there's reunification therapy or different things maybe, but what can really be done?
So I have actually seen judges flip custody based off that. Like they hate it that much and like force the kid.
Okay.
The issue with that, from my perspective, is while I understand it's meant to punish the parent, it may really screw up the kid.
Yeah.
So I have seen also judges do a gradual schedule and to like say to the kid, like, buddy, you have to go with mom or you have to go with dad. This isn't an option. It's based off what I say. You have to do it or you're going to have to come back here and see me. Like I have had them do that. But you know, it's hard. And I have seen judges put in, like, if I hear about this or if I bring your kid in 2 months and he tells me the same thing, you're going to the local prison, right? Like they make a big scene about it. But my whole thing is there's certain kids that you can just throw with the parent that's been alienated against and they're fine. Like there's no problem. Once they're with dad and all the stuff that mom told them, we're good. But there's other kids that's like a recipe for a mental health crisis. So that's what I'm saying. There has to be a revamp. Well, the whole family court system needs a revamp, but there has to be some sort of, I don't know what the answer is, but it's not working because the more I practice law, which is 6 years, but I do a lot of family law cases, it's coming up more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think there's no consequence to it. It's just like you get to the point where your 12-year-old says, well, I'm just not going.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it's not for parents that don't show up, right? Like, so there's a huge difference. Like I know we talked about in the beginning, but for a parent that doesn't show up or doesn't call voluntarily is not parental alienation. Parental alienation is a willful disrespect, in my mind, of the other parent or willful disregard for their parent as being a parent. Because I get a lot of that. Like, well, he just, doesn't call. Well, that's not alienation. That's just being not a good parent.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So kind of on the line of DHS, CPS, maybe if you can give examples that where CPS, I don't know if we can say this, handled it wrongly, or how should parents handle CPS involvement when it's kind of flying both ways?
Yeah, so CPS is my worst nightmare, but literally. So the biggest issue in custody court is one of the biggest issues is CPS, right? Because CPS has the ability to unilaterally indicate, find, whatever word you want to use, depending on your state, a problem based off care and neglect, based off inadequate housing, based off substance abuse, based off, I mean, there's about 500 things they can pick. So the problem with that is it's unilateral by CPS, which means no judge signs off on it. No, they just decide you meet this criteria. But under the law, that is mandatory that they consider that in custody court, right? So now I have CPS, some supervisor, not even an attorney, not a judge, just saying, you know what, I think you meet the criteria for this. And now it's being used against my client or for my client in a custody case. And it's like, now I have to explain this, right? So I think that's why. And also they have the power, as you know, to unilaterally remove children and do emergency orders. And if, you make a call serious enough, they're going to do something to err on the side of caution, which I can respect depending on what it is. And now the kid is with the other parent, right? So it is a constant, you do this, I do this, tick for tack, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, we have what I call serial PFAs, protection from abuse, might be restraining order in certain states, and CPS filers. I mean, you're talking every week doing the same thing, and it's all for custody advantages. And the problem is, again, with the system, is I can't stop somebody from calling CPS. Like, no judge is ever going to say, you can't call CPS, because What if there really is a danger or a problem or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But the constant, investigations, and they have to do an investigation by law, which I understand and I respect because there are kids that are in bad situations, but
Yeah.
the clear, it's honestly a form of alienation because you're constantly calling to get a leg up in a custody order.
Yeah.
So it's a huge problem for us. And a lot of the times, if there is a pending investigation, we can't move on the custody case until we get the outcome of the CPS. So because the judge relies on the CPS investigation to determine custody, some of it. So it stalls us as lawyers to do anything. So, and I think that's another reason people do it too, because they're not dumb and they understand it stalls it.
Exactly. I mean, not to give full details on my case or keep bringing it up, but that was a common tactic of my child's father when I had custody, and he called CPS a few times within a week or two. A hospital here called on him because of neglect. He was not allowing, we had, 50-50 on certain things or whatever. He was not allowing medical. He was not allowing therapy. Because saying my child was in my physical care, he thought it would help his case to say I'm the one neglecting, even though so they documented it and called on him. So he retaliated, called on me, and then used that to kind of drag the process. That's when he then decided to have a weekend visit, kept my son illegally, and then it dragged everything out. But CPS, I've heard a lot of horror stories, but just my personal experience, so there was reports on both of us at the same time because the hospital called on him, he called on me. They seemed really annoyed that we were both called on. They treated me horrible, but they then combined us in one report instead of separate, and they said he was founded of abuse. And they literally told me, since you were both called on, since you're both his parents, we're putting you both on the abuse registry. But in the report, I was not founded. So that spun a whole other case where another attorney had to appeal it, and they took me off of it and admitted they wronged me. But yeah, I've had not the best experience with them.
They're certainly not my favorite.
Yeah, agree. How can everyday people like myself protect children from being alienated, if at all?
Yeah, so I always encourage the child, if sometimes I have to interview them or the sibling, based off what I'm doing or whatever. I always encourage my clients or the child, listen, unless there's some extreme circumstance, of course, but mommy and daddy both love you. Mommy and daddy both care about you. They're having adult problems. It's not to concern you. You just have to say about your everyday life, so many clients bring children or opposing parties bring children into this. By, hey, you're going to have to talk to the judge, or hey, we have to leave soccer because your mom, whatever, right? And it's these kids should enjoy their childhood and not worry about their parents fighting over custody. And I always tell people, it's quality over quantity, because I have people fighting about 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, one overnight. It's not overnight is not effective if you're at work, right? No one cares because the kid's sleeping and you're at work. That is quantity, not quality. And your child is going to remember quality with you, not quantity with you. And parents, you I'm sure you see this and you hear this. It's always about, well, it has to be equal overnights, it has to be equal hours, it has to be equal holidays, it has to be equal. And yes, while that works out in a perfect scenario, not everybody works a 9 to 5. Not everybody's off on holidays. Not everybody's family lives close together where that's, able to be done. So my whole thing is to protect children is leave the adult problems at the door and quality over quantity. I have so many kids where their dad or their mom lives in Florida, for example, and they live in Pennsylvania, right? They go to the summer, in Florida or wherever. They they look forward to it. They love it. I can't wait. I'm going to spend my whole Florida with dad. We're going to go to Disney. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they're only there for 3 months out of
Yeah.
12. But those 3 months really matter because they're not in school and they have all
Yeah.
day to hang out with dad and do this or do that. And, you know, they really remember that. They're not going to wake up when they're 18 and say, oh, well, dad didn't love me because he only saw me 3 months out of 12, right?
Right.
So, you know, it's really hard. And the other thing I always encourage people to do is so many cases I have some civil lawsuits about schools who didn't report abuse and
Okay.
things of that nature. But if you suspect that a child is being harmed, even psychologically or mentally, not
Mhm.
physically, I mean, obviously physically, but that's easier to see than psychological or mental is really just pick up the phone. It can't do any harm, right? Because there's so many children that probably are being mentally, emotionally, or even worse, physically or sexually abused,
Yeah.
and nobody knows about it, and we could save them. And I think I know I have training in this, and it's easy for me to see, but I can tell a broken kid in my office pretty quickly because the
Yeah.
last thing we want to do is talk to mom or dad's attorney, right? You can tell on their face they're not excited, they don't have a glow, they're just like, screw this, why am I here again, right? And it breaks me. Like, I have to do it because that's my job to advocate for the parent, but the
Yeah.
last thing I want to do is cross-examine a 13-year-old on the stand. Like, I don't
Mhm.
want to do that. And I tell my clients that, like,
Yeah.
we don't want to put your kid on the stand if we don't have to. Like, please, let's leave them out of this unless we have no choice. I hate talking to kids. I love kids. I have one of my own, but not
Yeah.
in court. Leave them out. They shouldn't even know what the courthouse is.
Yeah. Does it typically happen where, I don't know if it's a process or how to choose, but does the judge usually interview the child alone, or is it more typical where you see a child have to go on stand in front of both parents? Because I feel like that's even worse. I mean, they're not going to want to talk about the parents in front of each other.
Yeah, so I will tell you about 95% of judges will take the child in chambers. There
Okay.
is, I can think of one particular judge in one of my counties that will force the child on the stand because that judge feels, while it's scary for the kid, and I think he recognizes that, he feels like they'll
Yeah.
be more honest if they're staring at both of the parents in the face. I don't know if
Okay.
that's true or not, but
Mhm.
95% of them take them in chambers. I always request that the child go in chambers, um, with or without lawyers. That doesn't matter to me, but
Yeah.
no parents,
Okay.
because and they also usually seal those parts of the transcript unless, again, there's an appeal or something like that. But they
Yeah.
usually, because they it's the main goal is to get honesty out of the kid and to determine
Yeah.
coaching. And you know, a lot of kids are petrified. I mean, I've had kids hyperventilate on the way into those chambers office, you know,
Oh,
particularly where there's abuse or psychological
yeah.
abuse, and they're scared that, you know, mommy or daddy's going to flip out when they get home tonight because they said X, Y, and Z.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly what happened in my case with my child. He was of age, and so he was taken in chambers to be interviewed, and it was known that he was terrified of, you know, being with his dad after saying things, and so there was retaliation. So it's very hard on the child and traumatizing. Um, I'm just wondering what maybe is the most common mistake parents make just in general in court cases.
What I call probably diarrhea of the mouth, which means
Okay.
just
Yeah.
just
Spewing.
yes,
Mhm.
because half the time you're sticking your foot in your mouth and you don't realize that. And when
Yeah.
people are upset and emotional, which is the definition of family law, um
Yeah.
they are so emotional and so upset that they literally can't control what's coming out of their mouth half the time, which I understand because it's a divorce, a custody, a PFA, a CPS, right? Like, nobody's happy, right? But they are so angry and so distraught that they just don't know how to function or say words that
Yeah.
matter and that have an impact without, you know, they're so angry at the co-parent that is, you know, F this and blah, 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 and they're frantic, and you're just like, the judge is like, whoa, Like,
Yeah.
whoa, right? So that's probably the most mistake I see. And I always tell my clients less is more, right? So
Hmm.
I understand that there's certain things that you have to articulate and they can't be in one sentence, right? Because it's just impossible. But if the judge or the attorney wants to know more about something, I guarantee you they're going to follow up, right? So just
Yeah.
give me the Cliff Note version. And if I need the extended version, I will follow up with you. Don't stand up there and ramble for 45 minutes about, why CPS was called, right? So that's sort of my whole thing. And and
Yeah.
and the other thing is, I know it's hard, but the emotions, right? Like keep
Hmm.
it in check. Like I know you strongly dislike the person on the table next to you. There's no question or you wouldn't be here. But
Yeah.
you have to even almost pretend that they're your best friend, at least for the next 8 hours, okay? Because
Hmm.
you need to show and honestly not even show, you should be a fit, willing, able co-parent. And I do think that the kids that have co-parents, that even if they fake co-parenting in the sense that, like, oh yeah, hi, how are you? Even if they really don't like the person, but they do it in front of their kid, it
Yeah.
makes for a better kid. Even if it's,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
you want to talk crap about him with wine and your best friends and the kid's asleep, be my guest, right? But let's try to go to the graduation or the soccer game and pretend like we are friends. Let's just
Yeah.
talk, and that's my whole thing. And like, so many cases I have, custody exchanges end up in protective orders because at the custody exchanges where fireworks happen. I mean, this, I don't
Yeah.
tell you this, but this is where, they're finally together and they're exchanging. Oh, he has a bruise. Oh, you forgot the soccer ball. Oh, you missed this. Oh, where's the clothes from last time? I could go on and on. Right. So it's
Yeah.
never, that's why it's always, remain professional. But I always tell my clients, pretend like you're at a job interview. That's how you need to
Hmm.
act.
Yeah.
So, that, because it gets you further, right? Like, you let them look crazy. Let the judge see that, not you.
Right. Yeah, it's sad that people let emotions get the best of them. And if someone has a legitimate case, let's say the other parent is abusive and you are, modifying that order, trying to help the child, and you go in all heated and, spewing, yelling, whatever, that makes you look bad. So it is sad that that can give a bad outlook, even when you have a justifiable case. Um, I was wondering if you could change one policy to better protect children from alienation, what would it be?
I think I would demand a child interview on every case with a expert in mental health slash alienation slash, abuse of all
Yeah.
types as part of a custody evaluation. So like, how you go to, well, in Pennsylvania, you file the complaint and then you go to mediation. Between mediation and trial, I feel like
Hmm.
the child should be evaluated. Now, I understand if we have a 4-month-old, they can't talk, but like a child where alienation and or abuse could be present, that it is
Yeah.
mandated by law that they meet with somebody, a neutral party,
Yeah.
paid for by the court or split by the parents for an hour or two and get a Cliff Note version and write a report. Because if there's something suspicious about parental alienation, I'd rather come out now and it be unbiased and get it
Yeah.
fixed before a trial, and at least have an idea, because there's so many times where, I hate trial by surprise, but unfortunately that's part of my job. And you get in there and the kid says something totally opposite of what your client's going to tell you, or totally on board of what your client's going to tell you. Or, of course we hear all the time, I don't want to go with my dad, I don't want to go with my mom. Then the kid gets on there and like, oh, I like both. It's like, well, what
Yeah.
is he telling you this at home? And then, it's
Yeah.
like, whoa, like I wish I knew this in a report before. And then, you know what? Maybe the kid doesn't have to testify because we have a
Yeah.
report and we could save the kid
Yeah.
from that trauma on top of it.
Exactly. No, I agree with that. I think that'd be a great idea. I mean, just from my personal experience, not that every case is like this, but I also think if there's some dramatic change, like just in my example, there was alienation ongoing over the last 15 years. He has illegally kept him in the past, blah, blah, blah. So the judge immediately moved my son back here due to abuse on the father, but nothing stemmed from, there was no provisions, nothing in place to help that. He went back immediately for a full visit. What do you think the parent is going to do knowing that the child just spoke out of abuse? And I always worry about my son knowing he's in that environment because there's abuse. He completely changed him. My son was so a completely different person, distraught, angry, having all the feelings. So I wish a case like that, you would have something in provision, something like, to your point, even from the beginning, even near the end at different stages, because due to retaliation, they can change as well. You can see those changes. You can kind of have this evidence of what is happening to the child. That's just my personal feeling on it, I guess. But yeah, I wish there were more knowledgeable professionals involved, to your point, that could do these evaluations on them.
Yeah, I agree. And like another issue we have is, and this is not anything you asked me, but I just feel the need to say it.
Yeah.
So we have custody cases all the time where parents have to be supervised because of, there's a variety of reasons, but there is nobody to supervise. I don't know if this is a problem where you live, but there is nobody to supervise, right? We have two places. One is at max capacity and the other one is slowly getting to max capacity. So we call them professional supervisors here. And that's like not a family or friend member. We have those too, but if the person needs professional supervision, it's $60 an hour, which can be steep for a parent. And we have nobody to do it. And it's like, we have this cadence law now that's in effect for about 18 months. And it mandates this. The presumption is professional, and then you can overcome the presumption with a familial one. But like, who's going to do this, right? Like I always say to my staff, I think I should open a professional supervisor place because I'll make millions. There's literally nobody to do this. And it's like, I don't know. Honestly, there's some cases where there shouldn't be family or friend supervisors because they're just as bad as the parent. Like, I'm sure you've seen this and you've heard this, but oftentimes grandparents or siblings of the parent are just as bad, if not worse, than the actual parent to the child. So, and then you have them supervise. It becomes a whole big thing. It's almost like they form, I don't want to use the word cult, but that's almost what it is. It's like a power move against, and so many times do I see a huge family, right, teaming up against somebody who, family maybe live across the country and they're here by themselves. And it's like a total, like, it's almost like the Pac-Man coming, right? Like it's a total, what we would call takedown. And it's sad. It's just sad because you only have one childhood, and this is not the way kids want to live their case. And I understand why parents get so mad and they just basically say, this person, because if somebody was constantly talking bad about me to my child or absconding with them, or I was worried about what was going to happen to them, at some point you do break, right? Like you do flip out. You do have a mental health episode. You do lose your cool, because what else are you supposed to do? Because you love this child so much. But the courts barely hold them accountable. It's like, where do you turn? And that's, I so many times catch myself saying in court, Judge, while I understand, saying she was stupid is not, the crime of the century. How many times is she going to say he's stupid before the child starts to believe those words, right? And so that's the issue. That's the issue.
And then as the child grows, again, being in that environment, they tend to start acting the same. They learn that, they're taught that they can start. It happened in my case, then he all of a sudden changed and started talking the exact same way, saying the same things to me. It was verbatim. It was very obvious. But yeah, that's very sad. It's very hard to navigate. And I agree that it's very important for parents to work on healing or find a therapist that is knowledgeable, that can help. anything, because, that does come across to your child, or if at any point the child comes back around, you want to be in a good space for that. Last question. What is something unexpected that has happened in a courtroom or custody case that has really stuck with you?
Okay, so I had a case where mother and father lived in New York. Mother relocated to Pennsylvania with court permission. Father stayed in New York. Father did not drive. Because he was in New York, he took the subway and all those public transportation. Child was primarily with mother and would see dad every other weekend. Dad stopped, would cancel a lot, but child stopped wanting to go. Mom was, threatened with contempt petitions. The kid was like 15. And I was like, Judge, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, she is so little and he's 15. Like, I can't throw him in a car seat. Like, and it's not like a short ride. Like, they're meeting in New Jersey. Like, what do you want me to do about this? So it was on and on and on and on. And finally we get to trial. And I moved at this point for sole legal and sole physical, because the kid's like, I am not going. I don't care if you put me in prison. I am not going. And it came out that father was using illegal substances in front of the child and also asked him to commit an unaliving for him.
Oh, wow.
Jeez. Yeah. So that's why the child did not want to go to father's, which makes a lot of sense.
So the child said this when being interviewed or something?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Basically that dad asked him to do something to someone else. And the judge, I think, was like, what? Like, what? And the kid was credible. I mean, it was clear that there was an issue. So, then they were pushing for, dad was, after the child was interviewed, we were trying to settle it at the day of trial, and dad was pushing still for, okay, I'll give up my weekends, but I want 2 weeks in the summer. And I said, I don't know what makes you think that he's going to go. You can put 1 hour a year. I can't, It's not going to happen. So we went to lunch, and the judge said, when we got back from lunch, we're just going to resume testimony. She'll make her, no more settlement crap. We'll finish this. He never came back.
Oh, okay.
He just left. So I am so legal and so physical, but that was top 5, one of my wildest ones. And I think it was so wild.
Yeah.
The kid was, I was not expecting the kid to say something like that. Like, I've heard the use substances, leaves me alone, lets me play video games, doesn't care about me, but to harm somebody, I was like, whoa. That's, new level. But yeah, it was pretty bad.
Well, yeah, that's crazy. And it obviously, if he does it once and asks the child that, more than likely he's going to do it again at any point. So, of course, that I would just not want to go either if I were that child. But yeah, that was the last question. So thank you so much for joining me today. I truly appreciate your perspective and insight. It was really valuable. And I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was so fun. I love doing stuff like this.
Yeah, great. Me too. And just one more time before we go, I want to say it's on YouTube. Is it just YouTube or other places as well, like Spotify or Apple?
It's on everything. Spotify, Apple, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. It's all legally, so legally, technically, at law. Everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. And I will also link that when I do post this. So thank you again, Ally.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to You Can't Break Us. If this episode spoke to you, subscribe and leave a review. Every voice matters. Every story counts. If you or someone you know has a story to share, email youcantbreakuspodcast@gmail.com to connect with me. Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and never stop using your voice. Because no matter what they've tried to take from us, they can't break